welcome back, Craftlings, to the Minecraft Short Stories podcast. This is episode 75, and is the second part to the 1 million plays special, which the main segment with all the fun little bonus parts, quizzes, and all that was in the last episode, episode 74. This episode is special for two reasons. First of all, it's the second part to the 1 million plays special. In this episode, I will be telling the second part to The End of the Hunt, which is a story submitted by listener Zachariah. And it's also special because it's episode 75, which means we are exactly 3/4 of the way to 100 episodes. So that will be a huge milestone, just like the 1 million plays was. Anyways, quick updates on the announcements for the intro of the last one. So The Player Is Not Alone Part 4, it is still in the works, it is getting close to completion, that will be out soon. And then the second part to the Patreon story, which is called The Noble Quest of Salamar. It's a part of the series called The Hidden Stories, which is a new series on the Minecraft Short Stories Prologue podcast. And that one is also getting a second part, and that is also in the works, so look out for those sometime soon. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and let's get right into the story. The End of the Hunt, the second part, by Zachariah. Through the darkness of sleep, I heard faint screaming, like somebody was calling my name. I felt a rhythmic on and off breeze against my body, which was now barely awake. I felt a jolt, a rush of wind, then the smack of hitting the ship deck from 13 blocks up. My mind wanted to go back to sleep, but my body ached. Did I fall out of the nest, I wondered, painfully picking myself up? Then I heard a blast that came from below deck. That has to be the cannons, I thought. But why would Snout set them off? That's when I saw it. The biggest dragon I had ever seen, wings flapping and nostrils flaring, rushing straight at our ship to strike it. Most dragons we came across were around 7 meters long. This one had to be at least twice that size. The behemoth rammed our ship with its powerful snout and sent a jolt through the deck, once again knocking me to the floor. I weakly got up and remembered my crewmates. Ridge stood at the helm, shouting while brandishing his sword. Pearl fired a barrage of arrows, which erupted into flames on contact with the beast. Another blast came from below deck, and a block of TNT hurtled towards the great dragon, exploding some distance from its face. It let out a cry of pain as it was temporarily blinded by the flash. I watched these things in terror, shock, and awe as I stood motionless, paralyzed by the sheer amount of action that was taking place mere meters before my eyes. I didn't know what to do. Ridge shouted to me from the hall, "Mike, don't just stand there and watch, grab a weapon and give us a hand." I snapped to my senses, nodded, and ran below deck to find my sword and bow. I had to dodge Snout, who was dashing about like a frightened ocelot, as he frantically dove into chests, grabbed TNT, and shoved them into the dispensers, fired, and ran back to the chests. I quickly found my weapons and rushed up to the deck, right in time for another jolt from the dragon. The force of the impact knocked my bow from my hand and over the edge of the ship. I shouted in anger as I watched my bow fall into the deep. I had just lost a critical form of combat. Without a bow, I would be forced to use melee. The battle raged on for what seemed like an hour. We fired cannon after cannon and arrow after arrow at the dragon, but it wasn't like the others. It was stronger, much stronger. As it would ram into our ship, I noticed many scars on its body, scars that were much older than the ones we were putting on it. This dragon had evaded many hunters. Even in the heat of the battle, one question stuck out to me. Why was this dragon so persistent? Eventually, through many arrows, explosions, and cuts, things looked to be turning in our favor. The dragon, which used to charge at our ship with alarming strength, was now too weak to attack. However, it hadn't quite given up hope. The great beast started to weakly fly away from us, and we cheered. We had it on the run. Ridge shouted below to Snout, and he let off another round of TNT. We watched the dragon slowly fly off a bit, and waited to hear the bang of the cannons. But it never came. Snout ran onto the deck, frantically exclaiming that we were out of TNT. The mood of the ship changed. The dragon, now even farther away, had the advantage. Ridge punched the mast and stared into the void opposite the dragon. Snout looked down at his shoes, feeling that he was the cause of the failure. Pearl disappointedly watched our lost prize as it limped through the air towards an island? I looked closer. There was an island, with a few smaller ones near its edge. All of a sudden, an idea emerged from my mind, but in order for it to work, I needed to act right away. I ran below deck, fished around in a chest, and pulled out a smooth blue-green orb no bigger than a snowball. This was an ender pearl. I grinned and sprinted back, ran towards the edge of the ship, took quick aim for a small island, and threw the pearl as hard as I could. In a puff of neon purple ash, I found myself right in the middle of one of the smaller islands. I turned to find the great dragon, now seconds before, flying straight over my head. I knew exactly what to do. Taking a deep breath, I raised my sword, ready to strike. The dragon came closer and closer, until... This is it, I thought to myself, and firmly swung the sword over my head, making a long, deep cut in the dragon's underbelly as it flew over. It let out a scream of near unfathomable pain as deep purple blood gushed out of its wound. The beast landed violently on the larger island behind me. I heard cheering from our ship and looked forward to face it. From the deck, my friends and crewmates were ecstatic with joy. Pearl smiled with a surprised but impressed expression. Snout was jumping up and down, fists in the air with excitement. Ridge, my captain and best friend, had the biggest and proudest grin I had ever seen on him. I grinned back and let the tears come down from my eyes. I looked down at my body. I was covered in bruises, ash, and dragon's blood, but I felt better than ever. Moments later, we landed the ship and ran over to where the dragon crashed. It was a glorious sight. The dragon was covered in arrows, bruises from TNT, scrapes and scars from the crash in its past fights, and, finally, the great wound that I had inflicted that ran straight across the dragon's belly. Yet, even after all of this, the dragon was not quite dead. It was close to death, but was definitely still alive. Its chest slowly expanded and contracted. It was just strong enough to keep breathing. Snout gaped at the sight. "Wow," he exclaimed. "After all that, it's still not dead?" Ridge looked to me. "Mike, I think you deserve the honors," and gestured to my blade. I understood. I needed to end the hunt. I looked back at the dragon, which looked back with a sorrowful expression. Most dragons that faced a similar fate would simply close their eyes or give up. This dragon was different, but it didn't matter. It was going to make dozens of elytra, enough to supply the rest of the city for a long time. I stood over its head and raised my sword. This, I thought to the dragon, will be a message to the rest of your species. I paused. Where was the rest of your species? Why had nobody seen you guys for a while? Then it clicked. It all made sense. It made sense why we hadn't seen Dragon for so long, why this dragon was too stubborn to die. I lowered my sword to my side and turned to my crewmates. "This is the last one." Of course, they looked at me with confusion. "Mike?" Pearl said. "What do you mean, the last one?" "Don't you guys see?" I asked. "Just think about it. We've been hunting dragons for years, probably faster than they can recover. This dragon has resisted nearly every attack we've thrown at it. It knows that its species is coming to an end. It knows that all their survival relies on her. I'm not sure if it knows through instinct or through some otherworldly inclination from the great hosts, but it knows its worth. We can't kill it. Think about the transdimensional war, how the piglins invaded our world and killed thousands. It was devastating to our society. Think about when our ancestors were forced underground and accidentally unleashed the warden from another world, and it killed thousands. Ridge, I know you were alive for that." A solemn expression came across Ridge's face, and he looked away. He had lost somebody to the warden. I continued. "Consider this from the dragon's perspective. A new species enters their land, they colonize, they explore, and do what? They kill thousands, maybe millions. Also, they can fly around for a bit. That is almost the exact same scenario that we've been in twice before. All these years of hunting, the pounds upon pounds of elytra we've crafted have been a mistake. We've done this world a terrible wrong. We can't kill this dragon." My friend saw our mistake and felt the guilt that I had discovered. Pearl was the first to speak. "Mike, you're right. We shouldn't have killed so many. But this one is far from saving. It's going to die in pain in a few hours. It would be inhumane not to kill it. And we don't have the materials to heal it." I looked at her. "But what if we do?" "I have an idea, but I need your help. All of you. If we work together, we might be able to craft something to heal this dragon. Will you help me?" Pearl and Snout nodded with serious looks. Ridge had tears trickling from his eyes, but a proud smile on his face. He nodded as well. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "Okay," I began. we'll probably need some guest tears. Through trial and error, we discovered the right recipe. We took an ender pearl, sprinkled it with blaze powder, and infused it with the ghast tear. The result was stunning. It sparkled like a crystalline geode with a pearly white color. Upon its completed craft, it branched 4 regenerative beams, one at each of us, and our scratches from the battle were mended before our eyes. We inspected ourselves, and sure enough, we were spotless. Snat was nearly trembling with excitement, as the addition of blaze powder was his suggestion. We had crafted an entirely new object. Rich hardened his expression, which beamed beforehand. Others will not understand as much as we have. We need more of these, and with more protection. Ridge was right. We encased the new crystal in glass, and crafted 9 more in case of its destruction. For further protection, Pearl cast enchantments on each one, so if one became fractured, it would explode to warn the attacker. She also cast enchantments on them so that it would heal the dragon, and only the dragon. We built giant pillars of obsidian to place them upon, and even built cages around some. Nearly everything was completed, except for one thing. There was one crystal remaining that Ridge handed to me. He grinned. "You deserve this honor, man." I held the crystal with both hands and carried it over to the dying dragon. When it came in range, a beam shot out of the crystal and hit the dragon straight in the chest. I watched as the wound that I had inflicted was mended, closing up and disappearing, just like the countless other scars and attacks it had endured. The creature, once weak, rose up and let out a roar of triumph. Its legs were strong, its wings were steady, and its eyes were rejuvenated. I watched the dragon stretch and flex its wings, overjoyed to feel no pain, and couldn't help but laugh. This caught the creature's attention, and it turned towards me with a glare. I froze and turned white. While it remembered no pain, it certainly remembered me. The dragon snorted, its hot breath rushing against my face. It reared back on its hind legs, glared at me once more, and roared. The sound was ear-splitting. I shut my eyes and waited, knowing that if I went down, I'd preserved a species. I waited to feel something, a huge chomp, a claw to my face, the sheer pain of its acidic breath, but it never came. I opened one eye to see the dragon back on all fours, looking at me. It was no longer angry, but understanding. Once again, I was unsure of how it knew, but the dragon seemed to understand that I, and the 3 who were watching this fold out from a distance, had helped preserve it. It lowered its head, nudged me softly, and flew high into the air. I watched as it circled the island, ready to continue its life for much longer. I smiled. Good luck, dragon, I thought. May the hosts be on your side. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before, just a few meters in front of me. My friends noticed it too and ran to join me. Sitting before us was a podium, made of a scratchy black and gray substance. We approached it and were taken aback at what we found. In the dip of the podium was a pool of stars. We looked inward. It wasn't a pool, but a pit. It appeared to drop forever, with no walls visible on any side. It looked strangely familiar. Ridge gaped at the pit. This is the same kind of pit that I jumped through when I was a young child, he realized, before we entered this world. Pearl recognized it as well. I could barely remember anything from those days, and Snout wasn't even born then. We gazed into the pit for several minutes, taking in what we were seeing. Snout piped up. Do we jump in? Pearl looked at him. We don't know where it leads. It could take us anywhere, like the Warden's World, the Piglin's Fiery Domain, or the Overworld, Snout interrupted. That's our real home, right? Ridge looked over at me. Well, healer, he said with a grin, what do you think we should do? I looked back, shocked. I looked into the portal, ecstatic. I looked back at my crewmates, my family. I gestured for them to follow, and jumped in. The end. Thank you guys so much for listening. Another thanks to Zachariah. Just cannot thank you enough for submitting this amazing story. And then also all the other stories you've submitted, such as the Uncanny Tale of Hollow, another one that I forget the name of, about a sniffer. I'm sorry to remember that one. And then also, If you were wondering where the shoutouts to the people who got the quiz right, and then also what the right answer for the quiz was, also you can still participate inside that quiz. The question was, what mobs change when struck by lightning or transform when struck by lightning? That is a quiz on the previous episode. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can submit your answers at the comments. If you're on Spotify on mobile, you can just input it in the quiz or inside the comments on the episode. I will not be telling you the answer in this episode because it's only been like a little bit more than a week since the last one. I want to give more people the opportunity to participate. But I will be doing that sometime soon. Probably not on the part 4 of the Players Not Alone, just because I do want people to be able to answer that before I shout it out. But sometime within the next few months. Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you for being with this podcast for 75 episodes and 1 million plays. And I hope to see you inside the next episode.